In this video, we're going to talk about 3 ironclad rules for child custody success. Hindsight is 2020, as they say. And a lot of times when I'm working with clients, they'll say, wow, I wish I'd found you sooner. If only I'd found you sooner. And as we move along on this journey and we start to gain more and more wisdom, we kind of look back and go, wow, if I'd known all this in the beginning, I could have shortened my trajectory so much. And so that's what I'm going to try to do for you in this video is shorten your trajectory to where we're teaching you faster, earlier, all those things so that you can have greater success earlier on in your case. If you like this video, you find the content helpful, don't forget to hit like. Also subscribe to the channel so that you get notified as new videos are released, okay? For today's video, I kind of went back and dug into my late husband Thomas's archive. If you don't know Thomas, go back a couple years on the channel. He was an attorney. We started this journey together, and it's really where most of my wisdom at least originated, okay? And so I'm going to try to take 3 of his ironclad rules and share those with you, and of course, put my own spin on them as I usually do. And the first one is your own conduct will give you more success than the best lawyer in town. And you know, when I read this in Thomas's writing, thought, wow, that's pretty powerful words coming from somebody who is a lawyer, right? Is an attorney, as Thomas was. And so for him to stand and say, wow, your own conduct is more important than that. I mean, how many times do we have situations where people can't afford attorneys or eventually run out of money for their attorney and they're scared, they're afraid to go into court themselves? People who think that they can just hand it over to their attorney and, oh, I have an attorney, so everything's fine, right? And that's not the case. It's actually the case that your own ongoing conduct has more impact than anything else. Because in family court, they aren't trying to decide guilt or innocence. That's not the question for the judge. They're not sitting there going, okay, is parent A or parent B guilty or innocent? What they're trying to do is go, okay, what are the problems in this family unit and how can I solve them? Okay. So if safety is a problem, they're going to try to implement things to make sure the child's safe, right? They're going to send people to classes or therapy or whatever they need to. If conflict is the problem between the parents, again, classes, co-parenting counseling, whatever tools the judge has. And a lot of times when we are doing things to try to quote unquote protect the child, we're actually coming across as, hysterical or interfering with the other parent or all the different labels that get put on us a lot of times when we're trying to protect our children in those ways. So it's real important that you understand the court's perspective and you understand that your conduct has massive impact in this situation. But here's the caveat. The caveat is you have to understand what that conduct needs to be. What is the court looking for from you? Because most of the time, what we think is logical and what we think makes sense to do in a certain situation is not at all what the court would want us to do. It's completely counterintuitive, okay? And for purposes of this video, I don't have time to go into what that conduct needs to look like. There's lots of videos on the channel where I talk about all those different things. But your conduct and you following all the things I talk about and following what the court wants you to do and the way they want you to do it, that could give you more success in your case than just about anything else that you could possibly do. The second rule is your friends are always wrong. Okay. Dare I say always? Yeah, pretty much always. Here's the problem with friends and family, okay? Number one, they often are as emotionally intertwined as you are. I mean, not in the same way. They weren't, married to this person or it wasn't their significant other, but they care about you. They care about your child. They want to protect both of you, see all of you happy, all that kind of thing. So they have a vested, interest or a bias already built in where you're concerned. So the information coming from them isn't objective. And most of the time, they don't know what the court would want from you either. They're going on their own logic or they're going on their own horrific case. Okay. I have so many clients that come and say, oh, my friend told me about this horrible situation that they were in too and blah, blah, blah. It's like, then don't listen to them. If they were in this horrific situation and it was all this conflict and all these things and they didn't have success in their case, then don't listen to them. Now, if you had a friend that had success, okay, then I would say listen to them. But I'm guessing that that friend, if they had success in their case, they probably went to some third party to educate themselves on what that needed to look like in order to have that success. Okay, so again, it didn't come from them in the first instance, it came from some resource they had. Because our own human nature and our own way of moving through the world, honestly, it's pretty contradictory to the family law system. And so until you start getting outside of yourself and your own kind of emotional bubble, you're really not going to be able to bring in that objective perspective to help you understand the way the court wants you to behave in these different situations. The third thing that I will tell you is that you are the ruler of your own case. And honestly, this should be a huge comfort because what that means for you is you're in control. And so many times when we're going through this, and especially if you're going up against a narcissistic person and nobody around you seems to understand it, or the court experts don't seem to get what's going on, it can feel very deflating. And it can really sometimes put us into that victim mode where we just feel like everything's happening to us. Okay. But everything isn't happening to us, it's happening for us. We just have to know how to navigate that in the appropriate way. And honestly, you're the ruler of your case. How this goes is really up to you in a lot of ways. And again, I think this is a mistake a lot of people make because if they do have an attorney, they just kind of go, oh, well, I have an attorney. Let me just hand everything over to them and I'll let them decide. And it's kind of like, okay, your attorney comes at this from a legal perspective and they can give you that input as to what the court wants to see from you, how your judge might read things, what things your judge does and doesn't like. If they're an attorney practicing locally in that vicinity, then a lot of times they are going to have a lot of insight around the judge, but they're not necessarily going to understand the narcissistic or the high conflict side. And they also don't know you personally or your children personally. They don't know what your values are, what your morals are, what you're trying to teach your children. They don't know your children's personalities, the things the children struggle with. Okay. All these different things play a factor. And this is why the situations are always so nuanced. I always tell people, like, I do the same thing all day, every day, but it's different every day. And it's actually one of the things I love about the job is no 2 days look exactly the same. If you're an airline pilot, right? Like you are going to you fly the plane every day, right? And it's the same instruments, same controls, all that kind of thing. It probably varies a little plane to plane, right? But it's a different experience because you're going different places. You've got different people on the plane. You might have different flight attendants, different support people around you, all that kind of thing. And you're maybe again flying to different cities or coming from different cities or whatever. And so every day is a little bit different, even though it's the same. And that's kind of how this is. This is like every day is a little bit is the same, but it's a little different because each individual is their own story and their own case. And so you are the ultimate ruler of your own case. So you get to ultimately decide what information you want to present, how you want to raise your children when they're in your world, as long as you're not endangering their safety in any way. If you are, then the court's going to step in and tell you how you need to parent. And sometimes the court does step in and give us certain guidelines like no corporal punishment or certain things like that. But ultimately, you are the person in control. And your attorney may make recommendations and say, look, I think we should go that route. And you can say, okay, I'm going to follow your advice and I'm going to go that route. Or you can ultimately say to the attorney, look, I appreciate your input and I appreciate your guidance and your advice, but really, I don't want to agree to that. I want to hold out for this, or I want to go ahead and pursue this in court. And a lot of those decisions come down to you. Sometimes I have people that'll say, well, should I do this or should I do that? And it's like, okay, your attorney is going to give you the advice on which one of those they think you should do. And is that, their job as the legal, advisor on your case? Yes, of course. But realize that your attorney is also a human being. And so they've got their own biases and their own life experiences and their own ways of moving through the world that affect their recommendation. And honestly, if you sit down and you have a conversation with your attorney about why you do or don't want to do that, I think most of them are pretty receptive to that and will engage in that conversation, or at least help you understand why they're recommending what they're recommending. And then you have the ability to make the decision. And look, if you have a situation where you have an attorney that won't engage in that or doesn't engage in that or doesn't have the time to engage in that, a lot of them are in that position, then you have the ability to, look at an outside resource like me or some other coach where you have that person to kind of bounce off of and brainstorm and go, do I want to do this? Do I not? What could this look like long term? What does living with this day to day look like? Because a lot of times people agree to things, but then they don't really think through on a day to day basis, especially with a child custody situation. What's that actually going to mean for your life? And having somebody that's further down the road that can give you that insight can be really, really valuable. Okay. So those are your 3 ironclad rules. Let me just recap them because I know we kind of go down the rabbit hole sometimes. So your conduct outside of court will impact your results more than the best lawyer in town. All right. Again, coming from a lawyer. Number 2, your friends are always wrong. And number 3, you are the ruler of your case. Okay. So try to keep those in your mind. Try to follow them so that, these are not as specific, as granular as a lot of the things that I talk about, but these are overarching principles that if you can follow them in your case, they will greatly impact your case and give you a lot more success than what you're currently experiencing, most likely. So if you'd like more help applying these types of principles and kind of learning more on a granular level how to do that, you can go to divorceuniversityonline.com/VIP-coaching. There's information on that page on my group coaching programs for moms and for dads. And there's also information on my one-on-one VIP coaching services. If you just feel like you're up to your eyeballs or your case is more complicated or whatnot, and you want that high level of support, that may be an option that you want to explore. So thanks for joining me. I will see you guys next time.